Having an organized approach to answering medical school interview questions will not only take the quality of your answers to the next level, but it'll also make you come off as more confident and comfortable in front of your interviewers. If you're new here, my name is Danny Kalani. I'm a first-year medical student in Canada. On this channel, I make videos to help you get into medical school. First of all, I'm going to share with you my approach to answering ethical and situational questions. And this approach is going to make you come off as a more reflective and empathetic applicant. I'll also provide you with an approach to personal questions to help you improve the way that you tell personal stories. If you can use these approaches and refine them with practice, you should be able to handle whatever is thrown at you on interview day. Ethical and situational questions can be some of the hardest for even the most prepared applicants. What makes them so challenging is that you're thrown into an unpredictable situation where there's bound to be some ambiguity. This is why you need an approach to answer these questions rather than a preformed answer for specific contexts. To take you through the approach, I'm going to give you an example to work with. Here is the example question. As a physician at a local hospital, you notice that there's a man with an alcohol dependency who keeps on consuming the hand sanitizer offered at the hand sanitizer stands throughout the hospital. He's not a patient at the hospital at present, but has been many times in the past. Consequently, there is often no sanitizer for public use. What do you do? First off, I just want to say that this isn't a situation that you would find in an ethics textbook like Doing Right. And with most of these situations, there isn't actually a definitive answer. What we want to accomplish with our interview answer in situational and ethical questions is showing the thought process that went into answering the question. And then, after going through that thought process, we can show our hand by giving a decision. To start your answer, you can always open up by summarizing what the question is in your own words. And then you can go on from there to state the dilemma or the conflict that's at hand. You really want to figure out what two things are in balance or in conflict. In our situation, we actually have two problems. On the one hand, we have an infection prevention and public health concern, and on the other, we have a man who's dealing with alcohol dependency and is probably at a low point in his life and needs some help getting back up. This is where you can start to really show your thought process by laying out each possible decision for your interviewer to hear. And with each decision, you'll want to go through them one by one and figure out who's involved and how are they going to be affected by that decision, both positively and negatively. One possible decision in our scenario would be to remove the hand sanitizer dispenser. Pause the video if you want to think about who the stakeholders are and how they might be affected by this decision. Now that you've hopefully taken the chance to think about it, I'm going to share with you some possible stakeholders as well as how they're going to be affected by removing the hand sanitizer. You'll often want to start with the person who's most vulnerable when you begin your discussion. And in this case, it's the man with the alcohol dependency. He's clearly going through a tough time and he has an alcohol dependency, which isn't going to go away by itself. In this situation, we've really done nothing to help him, so he's likely to go on to find another way to prevent alcohol withdrawal, which could mean that he ends up resorting to other ways of getting alcohol, which could have an even more negative impact on others in the community. Essentially, it's not going to help him and it could land him in an even worse situation. Next, we could consider the impact that this will have on the general public. Infection prevention and control is a really important thing at hospitals for protecting the general public. And there's a reason why hand sanitizer dispensers are put in particular locations. And that is so that more people end up using them. By moving it without any consideration for why it was put there in the first place, we have the potential to have increased transmission of infectious diseases, which would arguably be worse than having an occasionally empty hand sanitizer dispenser. Now that was one possible decision for this scenario. In reality, you're going to want to go through multiple different decisions and evaluate the numerous stakeholders for each of them. Time permitting, of course, the more stakeholders and decisions you evaluate effectively, the better your answer will be. Another element of a better answer involves how you handle ambiguity. When you encounter situations where you don't know everything you need to, be sure to point it out to your interviewer and mention how you would go about finding that information. In this situation, you could consider approaching the man in a non-confrontational way and trying to understand what his situation is like and whether there is some potential for us to help him. Maybe he's at a point where he wants to quit drinking and he's run out of social supports to help him. Essentially, you want to show thoughtful consideration and empathy towards multiple perspectives. For the sake of saving you time, I'm not going to go through any more of the analysis portion, but I am considering making a video on answering an interview question from start to end, just to give you a demonstration. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be the first to hear about it. Now that we've laid down our thought process, we're at a point where we need to be decisive and give our interviewer an answer to their question. If you go through all of the analysis and never give a decision to your interviewer, then they're going to be left wondering what you would have actually done based on the analysis that you've come up with. With that said, make sure you're aware of your time limits, because nothing hurts more than running out of time before you're able to actually answer the question. To structure our final answer, the key is to refer back to the highlights of our analysis, and then use that to build a logical argument for our final decision. With the right summary, your final answer should be relatively obvious by the time you get there. Now I'm going to demonstrate it for you. The decision I make must take the well-being of the man into consideration while also not neglecting the health and safety of our patients. By doing this, I hope to create a long-term solution that would prevent the man from getting into any other conflicts with the community. This man has also been a patient at this hospital in the past, and treating him with respect and dignity is key to ensuring that he continues to have a positive perception of healthcare providers. Maintaining his confidence in accessing healthcare is especially important if he lacks a support system. With those considerations in mind, my decision would be to approach him and try to gain an understanding of what his situation is like and whether or not he would be open to receiving some help. This would not only consider his needs, but also help us with any sanitary concerns. With the right highlights, you'll be able to make your reasoning towards your final answer clear and also inform your interviewer of why the other decisions did not achieve your goal. To restate this approach from start to finish, you're going to start off by summarizing the question and identifying the conflict. Then you run through the possible decisions and how each stakeholder would be affected. Once you've run through all of the decisions and stakeholders that you can think of, you should then move into answering the question by providing some highlights that lead up to your final answer. Now for personal questions. These questions typically ask for you to reflect on a situation that met some criteria. For example, tell me about a time where you faced a conflict with another individual. Basically, they're asking you to tell them a story and identify things that went well, things that you could improve on, and what you learned from it all. It can be helpful to identify some experiences that you would be comfortable talking about in an interview situation so that when you get a question like this, you're not starting from nothing. You can do this by fleshing out a list of possible experiences and backing them up with some details. One approach to answering these types of questions is called the STAR method, which breaks down into situation, task, action, and then result. You're basically just telling a story using this framework, where the situation is like the background, the context that leads up to a task or conflict that's going on. Your situation needs to be a specific instance that you can talk about with detail. Let's say you're answering this question about conflict and you want to talk about how you frequently have conflict with your siblings. Instead of speaking in generalities about how you don't get along with your sibling, choose a specific time where this happened. Now that you've given the interviewer some context, you can go into the task, which in this situation is the conflict itself. Maybe the task is an argument over who has to take out the garbage. Now that the interviewer knows what the conflict is and how it came about, you can tell them what you did in response to it. In the action portion, you can also talk about what your reasoning was for your actions. Maybe in the sibling scenario, you decide to take out the garbage this time, and then in an effort to prevent this from happening again, you work with your sibling to make a schedule for chores that you both follow every week. The last part of your story is all about your results. This is the reflective portion, where you talk about what worked and what didn't, as well as some areas for self-improvement going forward. Throughout your entire answer, I would say the most important thing is that you avoid vague statements and try to explain your story in a way that someone that doesn't know you personally could still understand. These methods of organizing my answers are what I found worked for me. Of course, there are many ways of answering interview questions, so feel free to try them out, see if they work for you, and you can even modify them to make them work a little better for your specific interviewing style. I want to end this video by wishing you the best of luck on your interviews. I'll leave it at that, and thanks for watching.